All right, welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. And today, did a little bit easier of a catalog for us. We're going to do Asia and going to just do the John Wetton era of Asia. So that would be the 7 albums. And to help me do that, Mr. David Hens, welcome.
Yep, thanks for having me back.
Awesome to have you here. And none other than Mr. Tom Jennings.
Great to be here.
As always.
Man, you said a lot nicer things about David than you did me. I'm jealous.
Well, Tom Jennings is a busy man. He, of course, writes for the Niagara Gazette and about 15 other national networks and things. So,
please stop.
And of course, David has his site, Music and Other Drugs. So make sure you check these guys out at their respective websites and where their columns are located and all their great news articles on music. So yeah, we got Asia here, and we're gonna get right into the heart of the matter. We're gonna go with our number 7, and we're gonna go in the usual format, starting with David, then Tom, then myself. So go ahead, take her away, Dave.
All right. My history with Asia is I was always kind of resistant to getting into them for the longest time, only because it always seemed like a little lightweight for me. Because I love the prog bands that these guys are from, but it seems like a lot of the people that listen or at least bought that very first Asia album, like a lot of them don't. We really get into like the serious King Crimson or Yes material in quite the same passionate way. I know my mom growing up, she loved like Only Time Will Tell. I used to hear that all the time when I was a kid in the house. But if you try to get her to listen to like Lark's Tongues and Aspic or some King Crimson album like that, she won't want anything to do with it. So, but then as I got older, I got more into the Asia catalog and I started to appreciate it a little bit more. So I kind of, and plus a lot of like a few of these albums I hadn't listened to ever, like some of the later, like the reunion albums I hadn't really gotten into that much. So I just kind of went into I didn't really look up any other ranking like on the internet or anything before this. So I kind of went into a few of them pretty blind. So I guess we'll see how we match up.
All right. So who do you got for your?
All right, yeah. For number 7, I have Gravitas from 2014, which is the last one. They had Sam Coulson on guitar. Jeff Downes and John Wetton actually produced this album themselves. And I mean, it's okay. I feel like they were trying to at least get back a little more in touch with the progressive aspects of the music on this album. And I mean, the thing with about all of those late reunion albums is they're very similar, like production. They sound similar. A lot of the songs, it's hard to tell them apart sometimes, but I think they're pretty solid overall. I'm like, none of these albums I really dislike thoroughly. Gravitas is like the least of the reunion albums for me. So that's why I have it at number 7.
All right. That takes us to Mr. Jennings. What do you got here, sir?
Man, we're gonna diverge on the first one, David. I feel like it's like breaking up with my high school girlfriend. You know, we don't agree. My 7th is Astra.
Wow.
And you know, I didn't. You know what's interesting? I didn't realize until I think it might have been today, but like there was until Phoenix. Did you know that every Asia album began and ended with the letter A?
Yep.
Yeah, all the Pain albums and the first 3 with the original lineup.
With the exception of Silent Nation.
Right, which was that the
last
was a later
one?
Though.
That was the last one.
How many in a row did they do with Pain? It was a lot, but
yeah, they had Aqua, Area, Arena, and Aura. Yeah.
Yeah. So Astra, I think David. I agree with David in that there's no true dud in this catalog. Like there's not one that laid a full egg. And I also agree that, you know, I'm glad to hear David's also a fan of Wetton's work with King Crimson, and I'm a big UK fan. I have the full UK catalog.
Oh wow!
One of my favorite records, it's behind me somewhere, is Steve Hackett's Tokyo Tapes, which John Wetton did with Steve Hackett and sang some Crimson Asia and Genesis material. I'm a huge John Wetton fan. He's just such a great vocalist. And Joe, you and I got to meet him together, and I'd met him before, after that, and had a chance to interview him. So I'm coming from that place. I'm a huge Wetton fan, and I love Carl Palmer. I really like ELP. I mean, I really like all from the big four. I'm big fans of all four of those, and in many ways, Asia started that journey for me when that first album came out, because I started the exploration of the other catalogs and everything. In terms of Astra, it's to me, the problem with this record is it just sounds like a product of its time. The production is just so, like, I don't know, so 80s. It's so mid 80s. It's got that kind of keyboard heavy, just sort of big, Toto type sound, and that everybody was doing in the mid 80s. It's like when you watch a movie, that has like Beverly Hills Cop or something, and you hear those soundtracks. So I'm just not thrilled with the production elements on this particular record. I don't think the songs are particularly strong. And I mean, Mandy Meyer, in terms of his guitar playing, it's really surprising, because if I remember correctly, he was with Crocus, right? That's where he came from.
Yeah.
So you would have thought that he would have added a little bit harder edge to the band. And there's a live recording out there somewhere in Moscow that Asia did with, it might have been with Mandy Meyer, but it had to be some kind of rock guitarist that really kind of put a nice edge on the Asian material, made it a little less prog, but a little more rock. But I don't know, man, this album, and it's tough because really the band had been through some turmoil. You had Wetton leaving, and then Wetton and Howe didn't get along, and then Greg Lake comes in, and then Greg Lake leaves again, and then Howe leaves because Wetton says he won't come back unless Howe leaves. I mean, it's like high school stuff, and I think the album suffered because of it. And yeah, and then GTR came out around the same time as this record, I think, too, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Definitely.
Little too, not to get too long with it, but just a little too mid 80s. I mean, that just kind of sums it up. And again, I like the song Go, but the keyboards on this, it's Jeff Downs. I don't know. Jeff Downs is a good keyboard player. He's great for Asia. I think he's a lot better for Asia than he ever was for Yes. But his stuff on here, it's just a lot of it just sounds really, cliche, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
All right. Well, I'm not going to agree with either one of you on number 7 here.
Look at that.
We're off.
If you say the first album, though, we're all leaving. I'm just going to say that. Right
yeah, sign right off, right? Okay.
Yeah. We'll be like,
all
we're
right.
out.
So, oh man, anybody will put that album at the end. Crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So my number 7. I'm not just to give you a quick rundown. I really think the last 4 albums of this catalog are very much they all fall right into the same area for me. Not one stands out immensely above the other, but they all fall within that same area, which is a really good album. They're all really good albums, but they're not the first or second album, and that's my problem with them. So my number 7 is going to be Omega, the one that came out in 2010, which would be the second reunion album following their Phoenix, which came in 2008, which was like the reunion album, even though the reunion tour started in 2006, right down the road in Rochester, New York, I might mind you. Omega, it's just a little bit weaker than the rest of the albums out of those ones that I mentioned. I'd say Don't Want to Lose You Now is probably the highlight for me on the album. The other few songs that stand out are End of the World, I Believe. Finger on the Trigger, the first song, was like the first single released. A solid Asia song. It sounds like an Asia song. But it just didn't have, all the power, of what I like about an Asia song. They were more like just good, decent songs, just nothing great on the album, really. That's my take on Omega. So that'll take us to number 6.
Yeah, 6. I had Omega also. Yeah, I'm pretty much a lot of what you said. I mean, it's a solid album. I like Holy War a lot. I think that's a pretty good song. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it was maybe a bit of a letdown after Phoenix, only because the anticipation, like leading up to Phoenix, like the original lineup getting back together. I think that was a pretty strong record. But then Omega, they took a little step back. But it's definitely, I mean, it's well recorded. It's well played, but the songs just aren't as memorable.
Yeah, that's the same thing that I say on that one too. Let's see what Mr. Jennings has to say about his number 6.
I'm still in shock about your Omega ranking, but we'll get to mine later.
Uh-oh. Wow. Oh, he doesn't like our Omega rankings here, David.
Oh, you're probably not going to like my number 6 either. It's Alpha.
Oh, what? Oh my God.
Yeah. And for a number of reasons, it's I interviewed John Wetton, and we actually talked extensively about this record. And that was just me trying to name drop there. So I interviewed John Wetton, but anyhow, actually, it's fascinating. I saw them on the first tour, promoting the first album, and actually, it was very shortly after it came out. I mean, the date was actually booked before the album came out. People bought tickets based on the fact it was this supergroup, and this second record it just seems like it was really pushed to get out a little bit too quick. And they were performing on the first tour. They were doing The Smile Has Left Your Eyes. And I want to say, I think Midnight Sun might have been in the early set list too, but definitely Smile Has Left Your Eyes. I mean, I remember hearing that before the record came out. And Don't Cry, I mean, that's one of my favorite Asia songs in the catalog. But Wetton said to me, and I agree with this, that the production on this is super thin. I mean, it just sounds very tinny. There's not a lot of low end to it. And one of the things that he had hoped that he would have a chance to do was get to the master tapes and give it a little bit more punch. I mean, Steve Howe's guitar playing just in so many ways seems lost on this record. Not that on any Asia record it has been as prominent as it would be, say, on a Yes record, but still, it just seemed buried. And the songs I just don't think were quite as strong. And I remember seeing them on this tour, and even the shows just didn't quite have the same energy that they had from the first record. So, like I said at the beginning, this isn't me saying it's a dud. It's just saying compared to my listening experience with the other records in the catalog, this is not one that I would rank extremely high.
Okay, well, you definitely shocked me by putting that one way down there like that. That's for sure.
I think this record gets a little bit too much credit because remember the original lineup only stayed together for these first 2 albums. So there's some romance with the second one because it was so many years between this and Phoenix, So it seems very classic Asia, but I think some of the newer ones with How are, more representative of what they were doing on the first album than this one. This just seemed like a cash grab in some ways. I mean, do you think that's an unfair statement?
No, I would agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And it damaged them permanently. I think this record really hurt their trajectory. If this was a better record, I think Asia could have survived longer. I think this album probably broke up the band.
Wow. All right. Well, we'll see what we have to say later. It sounds like David might be having this one come up a little bit sooner than me. We'll see. So getting back to the number 6 choice for myself, I have the reunion album Phoenix, 2008. Obviously, the highlight in the album is Never Again. Phenomenal song. Definitely fits in right with the greatest of the catalog. Definitely will be in the top probably 15 Asia songs of all time for myself. Wished I'd Known All Along, and An Extraordinary Life are 2 of the other ones that really stand out for me. Like we said, unfortunately somebody's got to be number 6, but this is a solid album. I mean, I got no complaints with it whatsoever. You know, a few tracks are a little bit filler for me, like Heroin and Nothing's Forever. I'm not a big fan on, but overall, the rest of the album pretty much is a pretty solid album. And I definitely give it a thumbs up for sure. So that is my number 6. What do you got for your number 5?
Yeah, number 5, I'm gonna go Alpha.
You alpha haters,
I
you. Wow.
Hey, do me a favor, don't cry, okay? Just don't cry.
All right, go ahead and pick up where you left off there, David.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say pretty much everything Tom said. I mean, the first album comes out in '82. This one comes out in '83. It's definitely rushed. I mean, there's just for me, there's too many ballads on here, and they're not as memorable as the first album. I mean, usually like Wetton, his voice is so good that he can pretty much sell the material depending on how like schmaltzy it is sometimes. But for me, the songs on here just don't really they're not good enough to transcend that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's okay, and even like the sales dropped considerably from the first album to this one. So I think people, which is weird because you would think people would want to hear the follow up, but the sales just weren't. I mean, though I think the first one sold like 4 million or something like that, and this one was maybe 1 million. But so yeah, it's just not very memorable. And yeah, I mean, I think Midnight Sun I like, and The Heat Goes On was another song I kind of got into, but the rest of it is kind of forgettable.
So you're
yeah, this has got to be, this one must have been in the shadow of, just as I'm thinking about it, this one must have been in the shadow of 90125 too, right? Because didn't that come out about the same time? I mean, you had Asia, which sort of got that accessible, and then 90125 comes out sort of using that same formulaic, you know, little leaner, non-proggy Yes album. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, I think it was 84 now that you mention it, but still this, I don't know.
End of 83, but by then Asia was already done because it was in September of 83, I believe, when the incident happened where the tour ended in Detroit at Pine Knob, and they basically weren't selling tickets, and they just were playing to like half empty buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah, when I saw them, the first tour I saw them at a place called the Rochester Auditorium Theater, which is about 2,600. That was sold out. And then they shifted to the Rochester War Memorial, which was around 10. And there was maybe 3,000. I mean, it was one. Yeah. Krista Berg opened up. That's right. Aldo Nova opened up the first time. But yeah, it was, that was right around the time Don't Pay the Ferryman was a big hit. So I don't know. He couldn't even help bring in extra. It was weird. I saw the Kinks, a similar amount of people, but the Kinks really crushed it. I think Asia had a harder time filling a half-empty arena. I saw Ted Nugent in a half-empty arena. He did real well too, but it's tough, you know.
How was DeBerg during that Asia tour when you saw him that you can remember?
I liked him. I mean, I liked his music at the time. I thought he was good. You know, it was funny. I remember when Lady in Red came out, it was just so you know, adult contemporary. It kind of surprised me because I thought he was pretty good. But I mean, it was actually a good double bill, you know, because that's kind of where Asia was. Asia sort of had, you know, like David said, there was a lot of ballads. So they fit well.
Okay. All right. Well, that should take us down to your number 5. What do you got there, Tom?
I have Gravitas.
Wow.
And I think this, you know, I don't hate this album in any way, shape, or form. Like the song Valkyrie, you know, I think I don't think the songwriting is terrible per se. There's not a lot of really good hooks. Joe DiMaggio's Glove is a kind of a fascinating tune thematically and musically. And I don't think Sam Colson did a horrible job per se, but I don't know. It's just Steve Howe's, just his shoes are just too big to fill. It's just the reality of it. His guitar playing is so distinct, so unique. It, you know, that's why out of the bottom 3, you got the Colson record, you got the Mandy Meyer record. And again, the record with, you know, Alpha is really, again, Howe is kind of buried in that. His guitar playing really doesn't play a huge role in it. So that's why I kind of put it where it was. You know, I mean, and then of course it's just, I don't know. It's sad for sentimental reasons because it really is the last thing Wetton put out, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think you were right. But I think a lot of that was because there wasn't anything on the. It was all by then. The record company kind of settled on Wetton and Downs as being the writers. For some reason, they decided how, and it could have to do with all that was boiling on down with them. Like the only credit Howe gets on that Alpha album is "Lying to Yourself." So I mean, and that was like a bonus song, you know. So that's where we're at with that. So all right. So
and on a Gravitas, remember the original guitarist that they reached out to? Well, there was a couple of them. You know, they reached out to Rick Emmett of Triumph to join Asia, and they also reached out to Paul Gilbert. Paul Gilbert was the one that recommended Sam Colson, and you and I got to see the Sam Colson lineup, and they were great. I mean, they really were. I thought Sam did a nice job.
Yeah, I actually got to see Sam another time too. They came later on down the road after Wetton had passed. They came and opened up for Journey at the Rochester, what was used to be called the Rochester War Memorial, but by then it was the Blue Cross Arena. That was, I believe, 2017. That's the last time I saw Asia in any capacity. I know they actually toured with Bumblefoot on vocals and a bunch of other. They got some other guy the last time they were out, I guess. So yeah. Weird how
I love Billy Sherwood's bass playing, but man, his vocal work. Ooh.
I think he was commendable on that tour. I mean, you know, he had a lot of shoes to fill, and it wasn't you know, it was hard, you know, but I thought he was commendable. It wasn't like he went up there and just sung the songs badly or anything. I don't know, you didn't see that tour, you said, right?
No. I mean, I saw videos of it and everything.
Yeah. Well, all right, so that's your number 5 there. Mine is Gravitas.
Hey, wait a minute. Didn't I have that too?
I believe so.
Look at that.
Look at that. Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same reasons that you mentioned. Nothing too. I think Joe DiMaggio's Glove for me is the one that stands out the best. Till We Meet Again is another cool song. It's weird. It's kind of like that song is prophetic in a way because of the fact, you know, that what turns out to be the last Wetton song, you know, that comes on an album that he sang on, Till We Meet Again, almost as if, you know, he could see the future or something. Heaven Help Me Now, you know, just weird titles on this here. But you know, solid album nonetheless. I thought Colson's playing on it was decent. And you know, like you said, it missed not having Steve Howe. Like you said, there's no way you can replace Steve Howe. He's really irreplaceable. You know, I only can think of one time where Howe was replaced where the guitar player was probably just as good, and that would be obviously Trevor Rabin. And yes, when he took over after Howe left, yes.
But very, very different styles. I mean, that's almost like two entirely different bands. You know, it's just weird.
But I thought he did, you know, really well, though. You know, at least it was somebody who was a really good guitar player that came in and know, you know, he did great. You know, he helped get Yas's career back on the right track because, you know, who knows what would have happened if Trevor Rabin never stepped in there and they recorded 90125. You just never know where they would have gone from there at that point.
Yeah, and their first guitarist, Peter Banks, was really good too. I mean, obviously not Steve Howe good, but he, you know, those records without Howe, he did a great job on. I mean, you know, these prog guys, I mean, they're an interesting bunch. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's funny. It's like you have certain, like you mentioned Journey. Of course, Journey replaced, you know, they replaced Steve Perry with a couple of sound-alikes afterwards. But with instrumentalists, it's a little tougher, you know. I mean, I look at a situation like with REO Speedwagon. So, you know, Dave Amato is great, but man, he's not Gary Richrath.
No.
I mean, that's a different band
yeah.
without Gary Richrath. And I think with Yes, the material was far better suited to Rabin, and he wrote a lot of it too. So
Right.
that helps. Colson, I don't think wrote anything. I don't know. So maybe that's part of it as well. And I don't think Mandy Meyer wrote anything either of significance.
Okay. Yeah, it was all Jeff Downs and John Wetton on the
Yeah.
Gravitas. And then when you look back at the Astra, which I believe you put as your number 7.
Yep.
Same thing. Wetton and Downs.
Yep.
Palmer had a hand in a couple tracks, but that was about it. All right, so that's going to take us down. We're getting down there. Number 4. David?
Yeah, number 4, I have Phoenix from 2008, the first reunion album. Yeah, Never Again is a great song. I like Alibis, I think is really solid. But I mean, it's weird because I feel like all those reunion albums, I mean, unless you were like really following the band at that time, you would have never even known they came out because it didn't really get a lot of airplay or attention or anything. Like, I mean, given how popular that first album was, I mean, all the time had passed and it was a big deal that they got back together. But I mean, like, even for me to buy this stuff, it took me a while to track it all down. So, but yeah, I think for the original 4 such a long time, I made it a pretty solid record here. So,
My number 4 is Triple X.
All right.
So this one's got some good songs on it. Tomorrow the World I really like. No Religion. I like that song. Face on the Bridge. I like Wetton's vocal performance on this. I think it's really good. This is this the second one that they did? This is the one after Phoenix? Let me double check.
This was the 3rd.
Oh, okay, it's the 3rd. All right. Well, yeah. So they did Phoenix and then Omega and then Triple X. This is the last one with How. So, and again, I think that's, good record, solid. Man, all tracks written by John Wetton and Jeff Downs. So it looks like How had a writing credit on a couple of them, but yeah, this band's pretty much always been the two of them. So I wonder who's the ballady guy. It's probably, I'm guessing maybe it's Downs who has more of a kind of poppy edge to him.
Well, probably because he was in the Buggles and everything.
Yeah.
And Wetton was always more, progressive with UK and King Crimson and, everybody else that he was in. His solo career too. Another great stuff on John is listen to some of his solo material. Really good stuff there.
I got to say, if you love Asia, you got to love Drama, the Yes album, because man, it really foreshadows a lot of stuff that they were going to do on that first Asia album. There's some really good stuff on Drama. I really like that record. But anyhow, in terms of ranking, yeah. So that's what I have. But this one is the Triple X Numero Cuatro.
And I'm gonna agree with you.
Oh Lord, come on! What's going on
here? 2
here?
in a row.
It's like a love festival here.
Hey, me and Dave, our Queensryche thing was actually pretty close for once. Me and Dave were almost right on down on the line there for once. Without Tom being around, maybe we're finally starting to come in the line here. Anyhow, all right.
David hasn't been lining up with us today, has he? I think David and I have won the same, but
yeah, we're kind of in the ballpark though with most of them, except for this whole alpha thing, which I'm going to get to very soon. Oh my God, you guys are
dude. If it's your number 1, I'm just gonna fall over. I'm just letting you know.
All right, I hope so. No, yeah, I'll knock you right off your chair. All right. So grab 4 Triple X, just like you said. No Religion is the one I felt is the highlight of the album, but I also like Bury Me in Willow, Faithful. I Know How You Feel. Definitely good stuff here. Face on the Bridge obviously was one of the big songs on the album. I just like this one the best out of the 4 that came after the initial breakup here. After Wetton was gone. These are the ones in the 2000s that this is the best of the batch from the 2000s. the ones that were made after the Phoenix reunion. So, the playing is good. Songs aren't as memorable, as the first two Asia albums, but they definitely stand up pretty well. If you listen to them, they all definitely sound like they were recorded almost kind of right around the same time. It's hard to distinguish one from the other than the fact Gravitas doesn't have Steve on it. But other than that, the rest of them, you could probably interchange the songs. If you took like the best three songs off of each one of these albums out of the four, it might maybe get close to Alpha. So, all right. So that's what I got. So what do you got for our top three? We're starting to break into, Dave.
All right, 3. I'm gonna go with Astra.
All right.
Yeah, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this album. I mean, I definitely agree with the dated production and the guitar sound. I mean, it's definitely more with Mandy Meyer on guitar. I feel like it's got a little bit more of that 80s hard rock sound that they're kind of going for. Which, I mean, it will Go is a pretty solid song. Voice of America is pretty good. Hard on Me, Wishing. Like side 1, I like a lot. It kind of trails off a little bit on side 2, but it's got that up tempo kind of vibe to it that the Alpha definitely didn't have for me. So I think that's why I like it a little bit more. So.
All right. So we've got one vote for Astra here at number 3. So Astra cracks the top 3 for Mr. David Hens. After
so
being
David, there's 2 songs I forgot to mention when I was talking about Astra. There's one of them that sounds like the beginning of it sounds like the THX sound that you get in the movies, which I think is Countdown to
Zero.
Countdown to Zero. At the beginning of that sounds like that THX, like
yeah.
I almost wondered if they actually took it from there.
Anyhow, so that was Dave's number 3. What do you got for your number 3, Mr. Jennings?
Alexa, stop. I'm gonna find that song.
What do you got for your number 3 there, Tom?
My number 3, you're gonna do a fantastic editing job with this, aren't you? My number 3 is Phoenix.
Phoenix Rising. Here we go.
The reunion album. Interesting. I mean, if you think about it, so as you mentioned, Asia had their reunion show in Rochester. They actually reunited without an album. And maybe just to see if they could all kind of hang out in the same room together and get along and whatnot. I was surprised after the reunion tour. I thought it was just going to be kind of a tour and going off into the sunset, because UK
Sayonara
did something similarly in that they did a couple of one-off shows and whatnot. But they came together. They put together this album. I think it's good. I enjoy it a lot. An Extraordinary Life to me is just a beautiful song. It's very, I don't know, very apropos, because of course John had been dealing with some alcoholism and personal struggles, and it's just a very uplifting song. I like the production on it. I think that they did a nice job. Everybody's parts comes through well, and maybe without the pressure of having to deal with, chart success. They were just able to kind of focus on the songs, because the songs are good. Songs are very good. And Wetton, I mean, even when he wasn't with Asia, man, he was putting out a lot of material, a lot of solo stuff.
All right, so he's got Phoenix at number 3. I'm going to go with my number 3 is going to piggyback off of David's here. My number 3 is Astra. And quite coincidentally, that's the 3rd Asia album that was ever released, and that's my number 3. See if the trend continues. So I do agree with Tom in the aspect of he was right about Astra. It's the least progressive, I would say, of the Asia albums. I mean, I know a lot of people saying Alpha doesn't seem to have, but Alpha does have a little bit more in my estimation. But the progressive rock of the first album to Astra is kind of more, like you said about the keyboards, Tom, how they sound dated.
Yeah.
But I would say that this album has 3 outstanding songs. And that's why it ranks ahead of all the other ones from 2000s, because you can't really top Go, Rock and Roll
Voice of
Dream.
Voice of
and
America's the other one. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep, that's the
Mhm.
one. Voice of America. There's nothing. That's probably the underdog of the whole album. And if they would have released that as an actual single instead of Go first, I think this album could have done a lot better. I think they just picked the wrong singles or the wrong airplay on the radio, and I think it would have done a little bit better. Wishing is another really good song that gets an honorable mention here. Too Late, another one that I really enjoy. This album is really solid, and without Steve Howe being on it, I think they still did a great job. Rock and Roll Dream is just, that's a nice epic type song. One of the longer songs on the album. I've always liked that one. That was one of the ones they would play in concert back, or on the radio a lot during that period, and then later on they would play it in concert. But overall, to me, Astra definitely a very good Asia album. That's why for me it's number 3. So we're gonna go down to our top 2. Let's see what you got there, Dave.
All right. My number 2 is Triple X.
Oh,
It's my favorite of the reunion albums. I just love the up-tempo, fast-paced nature of it. I mean, Tomorrow the World, Bury Me in Willow, Judas is a great song. I feel like this is the kind of album I wish they would have followed up the first album with. I think they all showed up and really gave solid performances on this album throughout. So yeah, that's my number 2.
all right. Triple X. Tom, are you going to surprise us with your number 2 here?
No, I've already foreshadowed what my number 2 is.
And
David, what is it?
Say Omega. Huh?
There you go. Look at that. See, he's paying attention.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's number 2. I tell you why I like this record. It's man, I just love Hal's guitar work on this. He's playing like a rocker. I mean, I think it's just got a lot of, I don't know. Can I use the term balls on this ranking show? It's some of the songs are just really powerful. And it kind of comes out of the gate really strong with Finger on the Trigger. Holy War, I think, is a fantastic song. Emily is just kind of a fun song. I mean, it's a toe tapper. I really love the song. I Believe. I don't know. I just dig this record. Through My Veins is another one, and Hal gets a writing credit on that. I just feel like in some ways Phoenix was like the group getting back together, kind of getting to know each other, but you didn't know if this was actually going to work. And it's fascinating. I know we really haven't touched on it, but on the first run, the foursome only makes it through 2 records before they implode. And in the reunion era, they managed to make it through 3. And it just seems like the recording process was much easier for them. And it just felt like on this second record that they were just a little bit more kind of together. Seemed like they were having a little bit more fun. And I like the songs. I think the songwriting on this was really good.
all right. So that takes me down to my number 2. And that is going to be none other than the second album released by this band back in 1983. And that is none other than the Great Alpha, which you guys dissed and mocked and put down really low I was shocked, actually. This is an interesting album. Let's I'll start off there. Interesting. Did you know that the last song actually written for the album probably saved this album, really, in essence, because it was Don't Cry. Very last song written for this album. So think about it. If they didn't write Don't Cry, this album probably would have received a quick kiss of death right off the bat. Would you agree with that, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, we both interviewed Wetton, and he said that. He says, you know, well, they told us that they didn't have a single, you know, and but that to me almost underscores the fact that it wasn't a really strong record. You know, I mean, Smile Has Left Your Eyes, again, they were playing it before. It was a good concert song. It was a nice ballad, but it would have been tough as a lead single, especially if you're trying to appeal to these sort of prog rocky males, you know, who are already taking issue with Asia being not prog enough, you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Heat Goes On. That's on this one, isn't it? I mean, that almost could have been a lead single, but maybe they were just worried it sounded too close to Heat of the Moment or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Heat Goes On got a little airplay, but Don't Cry, obviously, the big song.
Great song. Yeah,
hit number
fantastic.
10. Smiles Left Your Eyes was the second single released, and yeah, I just didn't really do much, unfortunately. But there are some good songs on here, though. I mean, to tell you the truth, looking at this album, there's not one song I don't like on it, and that's probably one of the big reasons why it's where it's at. Because regardless of the whole shebang here, it definitely is the very consistent album. Every song on here, to me, is a really good song. Maybe some of them are not as great as others, but they're still really good. I mean, standouts, like The Last to Know, Never in a Million Years, My Own Time, I'll Do What I Want, the aforementioned Heat Goes On. Probably another one, it was a big one, was Open Your Eyes. That was really big. They did that with Greg Lake on that Asia and Asia concert. Oddly enough, it's weird how Daylight, great song, but for some reason it wasn't on the initial album. It only came in as a bonus track on the cassette when it came out, and that's how I first got it, because at that point there weren't CDs at that time. All there were either LPs or cassettes. So I had the cassette version, so I got the Daylight on it. And if you got the LP like Tom probably does, it doesn't have Daylight on it.
I do have the LP.
Yep, I figured. Probably signed and bronzed and everything else, although he doesn't.
I got the first one. I got the first one signed. I got Phoenix signed. Those are the two.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, overall, you know, I just enjoy Alpha. You know, I talked to John about it a little bit when I got a chance to meet him, and it was really cool to discuss it. It's just a shame that, like you said, Tom, he had plans down the road to do something. They were going to do something special with that album, since I think they were going to do some kind of an anniversary edition or something, and it just never came to be, unfortunately. And I don't think we're ever going to see anything at this point going forward on it, sadly. But yeah,
I disagree. I think right now that catalog stuff is they've been mining it.
Yeah.
Heavily. I mean, they've been mining more of the reunion stuff, because they just, I mean, if you think about it, they just came out with live the Live in Fantasia, the reunion concert is coming out on vinyl, I think on Record Store Day. They had the Asia and Asia that came out as a double record. They had Triple X as a picture disc. They had a compilation CD of all the reunion records come out. So, I mean, I don't know. It must be one of those catalogs where they were really smart in terms of the rights. So if the rights but Alpha, it may have been one of those records where they lost the master tapes in that big fire that we all heard about. But it really, I mean, it could use a remixing. I mean, granted, there'd be a small group of people that would like it. I mean, the first album has been reissued, but I don't know if it's been remixed.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can make it any better, but
yeah. All right, so that gives us down to our number one, and I think we're actually all going to agree on number one for the first time in history here. Except, yeah, this could be the first time in history. David?
Yeah, it's got to be the first album.
Show us the dragon.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of my favorite Roger Dean album covers. Even if I hadn't heard the record before, I still would have bought it based on that cover alone. But that's I mean, Heat of the Moment is a great opener. Only Time Will Tell is a great ballad. The chorus, and that's excellent. I mean, Soul Survivor I like a lot. Yeah, Time Again is my favorite song off the album. I think it's the closest to kind of getting at what the original bands that the guys came from. I think it's got that. I mean, the Steve Howe's guitar tone on that I like a lot. It's got a little harder edge to it, but Paul's drum fill on Wildest Dreams I also really like a lot. I think they're really the only weak song for me was One Step Closer. That's the only one I don't really like as much as the rest. But I mean, Billboard had it ranked as their number one album of 1982. So it's obvious that it just caught on at the right time for I think people. I mean, had I been around back then, I definitely would have gone to see him on this tour. So, but yeah, for me, I knew what my number one was going to be even before I thinking about it. So it's got to be this album. So.
Yep. Tom?
And now you find yourself in 82. Yeah. I mean, we gotta ask ourselves this one question, gentlemen. Who frames an Asia poster? Come on, really. One of the greatest lines in the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin. Have you ever seen it, Joe?
Yeah, I got the poster right behind me.
Nice. Who frames an Asia poster? Who does it?
You see it over there on the left-hand side there?
Yeah, so 82, I would have been 16 years old when this record came out. Man, just loved every millisecond of it. It has held up well. Very strong songs. I agree with you on Time Again. I think a lot of the songs showcase the musicianship of the bands. And it's like, man, when you heard the lineup before the record came out, it's like, oh, you got guys from King Crimson, from Yes, from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And, the Buggles, it's kind of secondary because Downs was really more, had more prog rock creds from Yes. But man, Time Again was the song that they opened up with, and such a great opener. Carl Palmer's drum work on this record is just so outstanding. I mean, just Wildest Dreams, the kind of the drum piece in that, Cutting It Fine. The choruses are all fat. They're all just big. Soul Survivor, very anthemic. It's got great playing. It's got hooks. There's it's in looking back through it. I mean, the songs that are closest to being a ballad would be Only Time Would Tell and Without You. And they aren't nearly as ballady as some of the later stuff was. So just a great rock record. And again, kind of divisive at the time in the prog community when it came out. I think there was a lot of people that thought that the band had sold out, these guys had all sold out looking to sell records, yada, yada, yada. But for me, it's almost like the John Wetton finally getting a payday. The guy had done so many great things before he was in Asia, and he was with Uriah Heep, which is how this project came about. Did you guys know Trevor Rabin tried out for Asia before Steve Howe did? Which is there's actually some recordings if you look online of Rabin auditioning. But it's kind of funny how all these different people all played together in different incarnations and in different groups and whatnot. But I don't know, man. Great record, great cover, great marketing, whole 9 yards, great tour. Yeah, it's said the only shame of it is that they just never were able to capitalize on this album's greatness.
All right. Well, obviously the number one choice for us all here. I don't know how you could say didn't capitalize on the greatness, because this put them on the map. It got them right out of the clubs and right into the arenas. Best-selling album of 1982, and certified 4 times platinum. Another known great fact on this album is that it was actually number one for 9 weeks. So, I mean, I don't know how you could say they didn't cash in on it, because they did.
Well, I'm saying they didn't have any longevity. They really didn't. They couldn't keep a stable lineup. They couldn't, take this record as a launching pad. I mean, look at Van Halen 1, Van Halen 1, and they get up through at least 1984 and they become one of the biggest acts in the world. Yes, I mean, they kind of built their career up album by album and then peaked, and then they had 2 big careers. I mean, Asia, they come out with the first record, which is huge. The follow-up is a disappointment. The follow-up to that is an even bigger disappointment. And then they go through the pain years, which are really the only reason anybody gave a crap about Asia during the Payne years, no offense to John Payne, who they did some good stuff with him, but was because they were living off the fumes of the first album.
But
I mean, you think that's not fair, David?
No, I'd say that's accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I thought the first Pain album though, definitely Aqua, obviously. I think that helped kind of break him in good because then Steve Howe was coming out on tour with him for that album. And they
But John Payne is still stuck playing a whole bunch of old Asia songs from the first album.
right.
I mean, that's just, even the band, it's like, if you think about how crazy is this? So by the time you saw them at the War Memorial Open for Journey, I don't know if they were playing any of the reunion record stuff, but I saw them the following tour on that Yestival, and Bumblefoot was singing. They didn't do any of the newer material. They're still doing almost all the first record and some other stuff. And I imagine if they came out playing again, they're still going to be stuck doing most of the first record. I mean, it's just, I think even the tours that they did for each reunion album, they do a few of the newer songs, but they didn't really carry over anything from, by the time they get to Omega, are they still doing stuff from the other reunion albums, maybe one or two. So I don't know. So I said, that's the only disappointment. It's that they weren't able to put together a string of 4 or 5 classic albums, and they put together some great records, but the timing was bad because they just couldn't freaking get along.
Yeah. So getting back to the first Asia here, because I didn't really say too much about it yet. Obviously Heat of the Moment was the big song. Only Time Will Tell, another top 40. But song to me that I really appreciate the most is probably Without You. I really enjoy that. That one is kind of like the unsung hero of the album. That should have been a single. I think that one would have done better than some of the other ones that they picked. I just love that song. They got a lot of airplay off this album, obviously. And like you said, how Time Again, there was nothing quite like it when they got on the reunion tour and they opened up with that song. I mean, that really it didn't take much to get the crowd into it in their first show in 23 years at the Rochester venue there.
Water Street Music Hall.
Yep. The good old infamous Water Street Music Hall was where they had it. Were you at that one, Tom?
No, I was not.
Oh, wow. How did you miss it?
If you must know, I was going through a divorce at the time.
You and girls, I swear, girls are going to be they always give you the problems with tickets and concerts.
Yes.
Oh,
women have ruined so many records for me.
Yeah.
I should have been like Taylor Swift and Alanis Morissette and written that one great angry album about my relationships, but was never able to pull that off.
Not yet. You got time.
I got time.
You got time. But yeah, I mean, and then you did get to. When was the first time you got to see them back together? Then after that,
they played at Rochester Armory. It was a great show. I think it wasn't I don't know if it was the Phoenix tour. Maybe it was one after that, but they did. What was weird. So like they were playing a place called Main Street Armory, which I think is about a 3,000 or 4,000 seat venue. And they just didn't sell any tickets. So they wanted making it a free show and it still wasn't packed, which was weird, but they did 2 full sets. Like they played for a long time and it was just such a great show. I just absolutely loved it.
Yeah. It was the Omega tour, 2010.
Yeah. I mean, they just, it was incredible. It was cool. Cause the first 2 tours, they did not play, and we didn't really touch on this either. They didn't play anything from their previous bands, nothing. So when they did the reunion tour, I thought it was really cool, especially when I heard those early recordings that they were doing the Buggles song, the King Crimson song, Yes song. It was kind of nice, but when they had first formed, it was like they were making a conscientious effort not to play songs from the back catalog. because when we all went to see that first show, nobody knew if they were going to do the old songs or not, and then they didn't. So, and of course, some people were, all butthurt about that, but it happens.
No, I mean, you gotta remember at that point when you saw them at that show in 2010, that they had 2 albums under their belt. They had the Phoenix and Omega, and it looks like, according to what I'm seeing from that set list here, they played 4 from Omega, 2 from Phoenix. So that was interesting, and they managed to even slip in a song from Astra, oddly enough, which would have been Go, because you got to remember.
Yeah, dude, that set list was incredible.
Right, you got to remember Steve Howe did not play on that, so for him to at least go and learn that song, that was, cool of him. I know he did that a couple times during the Asia era, but he didn't touch that. I'm not sure if that's like the only Astra song that he ever played live. It might be. I'm not 100% sure though. I don't know, but yeah, I'm looking at that set list right now. It definitely, 4 from Alpha, 4 from the first Asia. So they really mixed in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, Days Like These they played too. So that's that's another one that
non-album track.
Howe didn't play on. That was
There's your trivia quiz. Who was that guitarist? Because I know.
Pat Thrall.
I thought it was Steve Lukather.
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Could be
Oh,
wrong.
Pat Thrall's the guy that I was thinking of earlier when I mentioned that Russian recording. There's a live recording of him with Asia that is just outstanding.
Yeah. Let's get to the bottom of that. It's nice to hear these things here. Asia. Yeah, I don't remember Lukather playing on that one, but I could be wrong. Who knows?
Yeah, I could be wrong too, but I don't like to admit it. So if I am wrong, let me down easy.
That album went gold though.
Yeah.
Track 6, Days Like These, Steve Lukather.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Not bad for an old man, huh?
Mm-hmm. And Scott Gorham actually played on track number 9, which would have been Summer Can't Last Too Long. Didn't know that either. Nice. Yeah, it looks like, obviously, for those not familiar with Then and Now, basically was a compilation with a few new songs on it, which would include the powerful hit Days Like These, which was definitely one of the highlights of, if you remember, when we seen them at the Rapids Theater, they played Days Like These, which turned out to be our last time seeing them with John.
Yeah, it's a great song. That's a great song.
I thought that show, that's what I really liked about that show, was the fact that they played, a lot of stuff. They played, I believe they played Go, they played Days Like These. They were really putting a lot of good songs in that set list there. A set, like we said, it was Gravitas tour. And sadly, it was the last time I got to see him with John, the last time we got to see him there.
Yeah.
But definitely, at least it's a good memory, a good time there. There's no doubt. That was 2014 where they played that, 18 song set list. And it pretty much, they played 2 from Gravitas, 2 from 1 from Phoenix, 2 from Triple X. So they did mix it up pretty good. That played Days Like These. Just an overall great representation of the Asia catalog, I felt, for that album and that tour. So there we have it. The first Asia, obviously the best. I don't know anybody out there who would disagree with that ranking there, with that number 1 choice there. Anything else you care to add, David?
Oh no, I unfortunately, with as many shows as I've gone to and that I was going to around the time they got back together, I never saw Asia live, so that's one of my concert regrets.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Tom. Any chance you think they're going to keep on trying to do anything else with Asia right now?
Last I knew they were, when I spoke to Carl Palmer, in fact, they had something scheduled. They were supposed to be doing rehearsals. I forget the guy that they had had a really good. It was somebody that had a really good voice that would have been able to handle the Wetton material very well. But yeah, I don't know. It seemed to, it was put on hold for some reason. Like, well, I remember what it is. They were supposed to tour with the Alan Parsons Project. And I think they just go under Alan Parsons now. I don't think they're officially called the Alan Parsons Project. But Alan got sick, so he had to cancel his entire tour. And I don't think they feel confident enough to go out on their own. So they probably are waiting to see if they can get an offer to go out with somebody. Because yeah, like Yes had a tour scheduled for England and they had to cancel it recently because of insurance issues. So,
Yeah. So
they don't have any tour dates either.
I heard later in the fall they're supposed to come back here in the States.
Yeah.
Yes. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Asia, I guess in 2022, like you said, they were supposed to have Alan Parsons with them. Says they announced the 40th anniversary tour with Mark Bonilla on guitar
Mark
and
O'Neill.
vocals.
Okay. Yeah.
So those of you
That's the guy.
familiar with him, he's worked as a sideman for many people, including Keith Emerson, Ronnie Montrose, Glenn Hughes, David Coverdale, and yeah. So I mean, they got.
I think he did the Greg Lake parts for some of the Carl Palmer stuff too. I think that's where the connection is. So he's got that kind of Greg Lake, John Wetton style voice.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely really good. I'd like to see Asia come back in some kind of a form again, just to see. It wouldn't be the same. It's not the same, obviously, anymore for me without John there. But for that matter, Steve. But I thought Sam Coulson did a great job on the Gravitas tour. I got nothing. And even on the later tour, I thought Sam's playing was really good, really good. Like you said, the Sherwood stepping in for vocals, and I'm not sure. I didn't see the Bumblefoot. What did you think of that whole tour there?
He surprised me how good of a vocalist he was. I mean, definitely not as strong a vocalist as Wetton, but he did an admirable job.